Conversations outside. People in the council chambers, we need you to get real quiet or go out in the hallway, please. Thank you so much. All right, Denny, I think I'm ready. Good evening, everyone, again, and welcome back. We are now about to enter our 7 p.m. meeting. It's August 30th, 2021, and this is a special meeting of council. We need to call this meeting to order with our roll call, please.
Councilmember Nelson.
Here.
Councilmember Chance.
Here.
Councilmember Bradburn.
Present.
Councilmember Stricula.
Here.
Vice Mayor Gill.
Here.
Councilmember Hunterlaw.
Here.
Mayor Grossman.
Here. All right, item 3 on the agenda is executive session for acquisition or disposition of property and security arrangements. I need a motion to adjourn into executive session for those purposes, acquisition and disposition of property and security arrangements.
So moved.
Mayor, if I can, are we going to have a moment to discuss it all? Or does this go straight to vote? And
This is what's on the agenda, and so this is what we're required to do.
do we have council discussion?
Not typically here.
I mean, on the motion to adjourn into executive session, there can be.
Okay.
Was there, I didn't hear yet if there was a motion and a second.
There was a motion, and Councilmember Nelson interrupted. So is there someone with a second? Okay, there's a motion and a second. Is there council discussion over the motion and the second?
Yes, I have council discussion, Mayor.
Okay.
First of all, I want to say if we're going into executive session for anything to do with this land development, I want to say that actually we're not able to do that, and let me tell you why. On November 7th, a special meeting of council was called, which was not a normal meeting. Mayor Grossman, Bradburn, Honerlaw, and Gill authorized the city manager to negotiate the best deal possible with CMC Properties. I requested Section 129 to be enacted, and this requires the developer to sign an affidavit, as well as council members to sign an affidavit stating that they have no relation or any business transactions pending or any shared property interests with each other. When I received and no executive session can take place until these affidavits have been returned. When I received the returned affidavits, I didn't get one from CMC Properties. I received one from Keystone Lot, Inc. And I want to know why this changed and when. Our beginning development contracts had CMC as the development company, but then somewhere along the way after I requested the Section 125, Keystone Lot LLC was now changed to be the developer. Keystone Lot was not the company that the 4 members of council had directed our city manager or the law director to negotiate with. Also, the affidavit was not complete. The questions were not answered, so this contract is an invalid contract. On page 14 of the agreement, under the management and ownership of development, it clearly states that this contract that can be transferred to entities with common control with the developer, or who owned in whole or in part, directly or indirectly, by any of the persons who own developer or any of his affiliated CMC companies, directly or indirectly, and formed to own and develop the city property. Okay, I have a huge concern about that because now if this contract can be transferred to any of these individuals, all of these individuals need to sign a Section 125. I am actually requesting that to be enacted today. We need to know who the partners are in Keystone LLC. Those partners and those investors need to also do a Section 125 affidavit. This section needs to change to state the individuals who received it. I know I need 2 other council members to also invoke the Section 125. And executive session cannot be held tonight, and the first reading needs to be postponed. There are serious concerns as to why this has changed after Section 125 was invoked. Section 125 was put in place for transparency, and this is not transparent. This entire contract is actually invalid because Keystone was not the entity that the 4 council members approved for the city manager and law director to negotiate with. So do I have any other council members who are willing to invoke Section 125?
Hold on, before you do that, can you invoke that for a transaction that could occur in the future?
Oh, we did.
I don't understand I mean, you can try to invoke it now. We invoked it in good faith, and that was actually initiated by me in our committee meeting. You were there.
And I also
And-
was one of the individuals who invoked it.
So there were 4 of us?
But
Okay. But
if I could speak, if that's the case, then we need to remove those individuals from the contract, because this is a definite workaround
and
to
where?
getting
yeah,
around.
What
Excuse me,
page?
I'm
Can you
speaking.
show me that? What page?
It's page 14.
14, okay.
This is a way that someone could absolutely work around this Section 125, and this section was put into place to make sure that when we do real estate transactions, that there is no, secret dealings going on, no conflicts of interest. This is why it's there. So the reason, we have all that stuff in there saying that this can be transferred at any time to these individuals. Well, who are these individuals, and why don't we have Section 125 affidavits on them? And also, like I said, the Keystone affidavit is not even accurate because it's invalid. It's not filled in. It just says Keystone and the signature. It doesn't state if he does or does not have any of these conflicts of interests. So I do not think that we can legally go into executive session tonight until these affidavits have been filled out.
And that wasn't something you could bring up earlier? I think
No,
you're
I
right.
just-
I don't know if you're right.
I didn't get this contract until like 2 days ago.
We got it
So-
last week.
Well,
got it all
we
week.
got it 4 days ago or something, and it took me a little while to read through all
Yeah,
of
it's
this
long.
and comprehend every single thing we're giving away. So it did take me a little while.
Yeah.
So it's been a couple days.
Well, I think our law director needs to opine on this because this one it's not clear to me, her interpretation.
It's very clear to me.
Well, that's fine, but let's get some feedback from our law director.
Well, I can tell you that there is a provision in the draft development agreement that allows the developer to assign his interest in the contract to a related business entity. That's a common provision in any kind of development agreement, but you're correct, that is in the agreement.
So with that being said, we do need to make sure that if those individuals are going to be able to get this contract, that we have a affidavit from each individual, as well as the partners of Keystone, because we don't have those, before we can go on with this. This is in our Section 125 is definitely able to be invoked for this reason, to make sure it's transparent for our community.
I can tell you that Chapter 125 has already been invoked. In Chapter 125, as it's in the code now, has to do with the buyer and the seller of property. And right now, I can only tell you that the proposed buyer of the property is Keystone Lot LLC. That is the buyer in the contract. And Chapter 125 has been invoked after Keystone Lot LLC was identified as the buyer, and Keystone Lot LLC did provide the affidavit that was, I think, signed by the managing member. I don't remember exactly who executed it on behalf of.
So then basically Section 125 is not even useful, because if we can't, if we get the affidavit to us that says, hey, Keystone has no conflict of interest with anyone, well, maybe CMC does. I'm not saying they do, but I'm just saying possibly they do. We don't know because we don't have an affidavit on file. And this is a definite workaround to get around being transparent and disclosing stuff. If we have
That's not an
these
appropriate
kind of,
allegation.
it's factual.
Well, no, it's an allegation. What's your evidence?
It's not.
Hold on.
I'm not
Hold
saying
on.
it happened by any means, nor am I saying there is a conflict of interest. But what I am saying is that this affidavit needs to be filled out by everybody who is able to get into this contract. I'm not saying it's him, but any development agreement that we do, if there's other individuals that can take over this contract, those individuals need to also submit an affidavit. It's not hard to submit. It only takes a few minutes.
I mean, all I can tell you is that the only thing required in Chapter 125 is that the proposed buyer execute the affidavit. And the proposed buyer in this case is Keystone Lot LLC.
So when the contract gets transferred to somebody else, how do we make sure that we're in compliance with Section
I
125?
can only tell you what Chapter 125 is only as good as what Chapter 125 says.
Okay, then isn't it safe to assume in this contract that any one of these individuals could potentially be the buyer?
The buyer in the draft development agreement is Keystone Lot LLC.
Correct, but that buyer has the right to assign this contract over to these individuals. Any entity under common control with the developer, owned in part or in whole, directly or indirectly, by any persons who own the developer, or any affiliated CMC companies. Why these individuals definitely can become the owner. So we should also have Section 125.
Well, I'll defer to counsel on that, but I can only tell you what the code requires and what the agreement says.
Well, can I get 2 other council members to invoke a Section 125 so that we can get affidavits from everyone that there is no conflict of interest?
It's not possible to invoke it for the other entities mentioned because they're not the buyer.
Well, I guess then if in the event that they do switch over, then we absolutely have the right to reenact the Section 125 to get the affidavits.
But, real quick, was the affidavit filled out completely?
It was not even filled out completely. It had the name and it had the signature. It did not have
that's a little-
anything
that's-
that says if there was a conflict of interest, those particular sections were left blank.
Okay, the buyer is Keystone Lot LLC, correct? And the
That's what this contract says,
potential
but
conflicts of interest or conflicts with council members or relevant city staff who participated in the negotiation process. He didn't identify any because they don't exist.
then it needs to say none. Nothing is filled out. It's invalid.
So it's invalid?
Correct.
And that's your legal interpretation?
Absolutely.
Is it invalid?
It asks if you can identify any conflicts. There were no conflicts identified.
Even your affidavit said none, Mayor. When you don't have a conflict, you are supposed to say none. You don't leave it blank.
Well, I don't really know the rules on that, and if that,
Made up 125.
But I would also.
no, I don't know the rules on an affidavit leaving, if the answer is, doesn't exist, then leaving the line blank. I don't know.
But I would also like to say this contract in general is invalid because on November 17th special meeting, four members of council authorized the city manager and the law attorney to make a negotiation with CMC Properties, not Keystone. So somewhere along the way that was changed without authorization from council.
I would say that that was probably just a misstatement, but I thought we were dealing with Jim Cohen, the member of the entity, as Keystone Lot. So I don't know if a clerical mistake was made, but I don't know that that makes this entire contract null and void, and I don't have, the legal expertise to make a ruling on that. Did you get legal advice on that?
No, I read the contract. I
Okay.
read contracts.
And did you listen to the meeting and all of the language there? Because I think we've been working in good faith. If someone misspoke,
I don't think
motion.
no, I mean, it was clear that CMC was the entity that we were authorizing. This is not CMC, period.
All I can tell you is that we were directed to negotiate the contract. We did.
With who?
Well, the entity that,
CMC.
I'm telling you that the development agreement that we've been working on for months and months and months, the prospective buyer is Keystone Lot LLC. And it's very common that developers create an LLC to be the the landholder for a development agreement like that. So it's no surprise that.
Well, it was a surprise to me when I got the contract and got the affidavits, because that's not who we agreed to. CMC is a separate legal entity from Keystone. They are not
Correct.
the same entity.
So the motion, someone made a misstatement during the motion, and you're saying that because someone
No,
had
I
the
also
wrong
believe
name.
the beginning contracts were with CMC, and it was later changed to Keystone.
I don't
So I'm not quite
remember
sure
that.
Yes,
What beginning
what I would
contracts?
say, Mayor, is I don't know that this
Contract.
invalidates the agreement, but it certainly could give any council member a reason if they want to approve it or not approve it, or even if it gets to that point. I don't think that because it has a different buyer identified, that it's an invalid contract. It's no different than any other agreement that we would negotiate and bring before council. And if council agrees with it, you can vote yes. If you don't, you can vote no.
But wouldn't you agree, Mayor, wouldn't you agree, though, that the person that we're agreeing yes or no on is the same entity that we started with and that we're ending with? Instead of CMC to Keystone? I mean, and truth be told, we got the final, it's not even a final, it's still in draft form, Saturday morning of this. It was still redlined on Friday when we got it. So it's 14 pages. It's not a ton, but there are exhibits and everything else. So, but wouldn't you guys agree with that? And I'm not sure if it is legal or not, but I'm just saying the optics of it, I think some folks out here talked about that, is the optics of it is if we start with CMC, shouldn't the agreement be with Keystone? Or CMC instead of?
I don't remember thinking that I was working with CMC. I remember thinking we were
That's what
working
we
with Jim
passed-
Cohen, who's
that's
a
what we
member of
passed-
the entity.
That's what we passed.
Someone misspoke, not knowing any better, that the entity's name was different.
Well-
Probably. But the contract is created correctly with the correct names and entity.
It's not, though, because that's not what was passed on November 17th. So I think we need to pause this and maybe do the first reading during the regular session of council, when our law director can look into this, and maybe I can seek some extra legal advice at this as well.
Let me ask you this, Law Director. If we go into executive session tonight to discuss loose ends on the contract, is that illegal?
I'm not going to answer that because we can't talk publicly about what you might be discussing in executive session, so I can't answer that. I can tell you
That's true.
that discussing a contract that has to do with the sale of property is appropriate for executive session. That's the most I can tell you,
Okay. So,
without violating.
Well, I just know that when Common Beer came here to try to seek a tiny little sliver of property, we were all told we are not allowed to discuss any kind of development plan with anyone else except CMC, because that is how council voted.
Mayor, can we hear from Jim Cohen? He said he can clear this up.
Yeah,
I'll allow that.
sorry, hold on. There's nothing on here about public comment.
No.
Well, we're having council discussion on the motion, and
Council discussion.
you don't wish to have him bring any
Well,
clarity
he doesn't
to the-
have, he's not, I mean, he can say what he wants to say. We know,
Meeting that you called with your agenda items to make sure that went right down the line. We cannot add anything.
correct, I agree.
Sorry.
Well, what is
Would
your
like to
ruling on
provide
that,
clar-
Jeff?
perhaps
I guess,
Hold on 1 second. We're trying to bring clarity, not confusion. We don't need more confusion. We need clarity. And if it's allowable, under our law director's opinion, to allow him to answer a question, I don't know.
Let
I'm
me
asking our
say
law
this
director.
first. I just, in discussing it with the city manager, I guess what I can tell you now is executive session tonight is not critical. So right now, there's a motion and a second to go into executive session. That's what this discussion has been about, is whether you want to adjourn into executive session.
Right. And the security meeting can wait?
Yes,
Yes?
I think all of the items could wait until a future executive session.
Okay.
There's nothing urgent about the timing of executive session tonight.
Okay.
It was convenient, but there will be other opportunities.
Okay. All right. So is there any other council discussion on the motion to go into executive session? Sorry, Mr. Cohen. All right. Let's call the roll.
Councilmember Chance,
No.
Councilmember Bradburn,
No.
Councilmember Stricula,
No.
Vice Mayor Gilb,
No.
Councilmember Hunter Law,
No.
Mayor Grossman,
No.
Councilmember Nelson.
No.
All right, let me find my agenda. Now it's gotten all mixed up.
All right, Mayor. Mayor.
One moment, please. Oh, thank you. All right, item 4 is ordinance 2021-92, the first reading.
Mayor, if I may, I'd like to make a motion to table ordinance 2021-92 for the first reading, please.
All right, that's, we need to take a roll call on that.
I'll second it first.
Okay.
Right, no discussion on a motion to table. You have a motion and a second, you can call the roll.
All right, let's call the roll, please.
Councilmember Bradburn,
No.
Councilmember Stricula,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gilb,
No.
Councilmember Hunter Law,
No.
Mayor Grossman,
No.
Councilmember Nelson,
Yes.
Councilmember Chance.
Yes.
Okay, the motion to table fails.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to remove the first reading ordinance 2021-92 from the agenda, please.
Under what grounds?
We shouldn't have the first reading.
Okay. All right, let's call the roll.
Is there,
Oh, is there a second? Sorry.
Yes, I would like to second that as well.
Is there
All
council,
right, let's call the roll.
council discussion?
this is not a motion to table, it's a motion to remove it from the agenda. I think you could have council discussion.
Okay, Councilmember Nelson, if you wish to discuss, you may.
I do. I think we need to be careful of this because with the items that I just talked about, how I don't believe this is a legal contract, so we're having a first reading on it. I think we need to pause this and make sure that we don't want to get sued as a city because we're doing something that was not authorized.
To add to that discussion, I'm not a contract lawyer. I know somebody who is. I haven't had the chance to really look into Councilmember Nelson's claims, but I believe when a contract is legally challenged, the context of what's going on around it really matters. And I think the context is all there, and the context was all done in good faith if someone made a clerical error and said the name of the wrong entity. So I'm not going to support taking this off the agenda, and you're welcome to get all the opinion you want to later, but that's why I'm not going to support it.
Mayor,
Sir.
I'm going to use my context clues here too, and I believe I heard someone say wrap up loose ends. And so to vote for something that has loose ends still makes no sense to me. And it should not make any sense to anyone up here. So that's my context. That's what I heard someone say, and I think that makes perfect sense to remove it, to make sure what we do have is valid. I mean, what's 2 weeks? I mean, are we that desperate? 2 weeks? And not only that, but hey, let's think about if this was such an incredible project that we have to call a special council meeting, how many people got up in favor of this thing? How many people said, hey, great job, council, good job. Hey, let's rush this through and get this first reading done tonight. I can tell you how many, 0. But we're still gonna do it. I mean, come on, guys. I mean, you've said it. We want to be a team of 7. And you didn't say that?
Oh, I do want us to be a team
Okay,
of
so
7. I'm just
here's the other
surprised.
Here's the other aspect of this thing. The role reversal is something going on here. We work for those folks, okay? We don't work
Audience.
for us. We're not land developers. We're not contract negotiation people. We work for these folks, and I'm sitting here listening to them.
The motion
loud
was to
and
take
clear.
the item off the agenda.
And I'm telling you why I'm going to vote yes to remove it.
Okay,
And the reason
making sure we're germane.
And the reason why is because I'm listening to people out here.
Mm-hmm.
And it's pretty clear. Wouldn't you agree? I think we should have a town hall. Let's have a town hall and get together and have everybody's, I don't need to be there. As Councilmember Bradburn said, I don't need to be there. And we shouldn't be there. Go have it. Sit down because I think you probably heard just as clearly as everyone sitting up here. There was not one person saying this is the best thing I've ever seen. And this is Mason. Again, I'm tired of comparing ourselves to Loveland and Milford and Hamilton and all these other places. Great job. I think and we all agree, we want revitalization. There is no ifs and buts about it. But we also want to listen to our constituents in the community and the residents and the business owners and some people that with their title, what they do is they advocate for small business, which happens to be our Chamber of Commerce. So that is why I'm going to vote yes to table this thing. Not table it, remove it from the agenda.
Anybody else?
Mayor, if I may?
Yes.
So I just have I am actually planning on speaking a lot about this, but just a couple of comments, and these are, you know, I'm not an attorney. I don't understand the contract, even to that detail, Councilmember Nelson, that you gave. There's just some common sense things that we can do here. And look, this isn't anti-development. This isn't anti-revitalization of downtown. But you know how many people came up and said they want a vibrant downtown? But tell me what that means. Tell me what that means to you, and tell me what that means to you. And I promise you it means something different to everybody. We've heard countless experts tell us we need to start speaking with the same language, right, to understand what that means. And you do that through engagement, not input. Tonight you guys got input. I'm proud that you did, and I'm happy that you did, right? But that's saying, hey, we've got a project, and just come tell us about it, right? What we're talking about is we need engagement with you. And again, and Councilmember Chance said this, right? Property owners, business owners, residents, property owners, and that includes you, Mr. Cohen. We want your engagement, right? Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your vision for this project. And I appreciate Councilmember Gilb saying, hey, we're visionaries. We should be. Right? And I think somebody said, hey, this isn't a vision. This is a project, and it is. Right? This is not a vision for our downtown. We don't have that yet. We do not have a master plan. And we continue to set the bar so low for the city of Mason. And we've done that on this council for 2 years now. And we compare ourselves to these other cities and the bare minimum that they have done. Right? That's what we're trying to do. And again, common sense. What is it going to hurt? Pause. Get engagement. Build out a plan, right? Mr. Cohen, what you have given us is an amazing piece of the puzzle. But we don't even have the picture on the box yet. We don't even know what it looks like. We don't even know what we want. And that's what we need. And that's why I'm for removing this agenda item. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Mayor, sure.
Yes.
So I've lived here all my life, and I've lived right on Mason Montgomery Road almost all my life, right down on the other side of the cemetery. I used to ride my bike. I've been part of downtown. I've seen a lot. The one thing I don't hear too many people talking about that I think is a big part of this is I've lived through seeing the boarded up storefronts of the downtown businesses. And this project, in my mind, makes sure that does not happen. This brings in enough walkability traffic downtown to sustain and help support all those businesses so we don't see that. And I think that's a big thing that if you've lived through it, you'd want to protect it more maybe. And you know, Mason has changed enough that maybe some people don't think that's a possibility, but I think that's a key missing part of our downtown. We've never in my lifetime had a $20 million, a developer want to put in $20 million in our downtown. And just like you can see maybe on other projects, you get to the point where this guy, I hate having this conversation in front of him. I hate that this is public, you know, but here he is sitting here. I don't want to see the guy walk away and we lose something and it stays just like it is for another 13 years. Another 13 years like this is going to be a problem. So this developer has a positive local track record of success. I mean, it's positive, and it was right here close by. He took us right by to see what all he'd done. I believe this deal will generate millions of property tax for the schools over the next 30 years compared to nothing if we don't pass it. And I'm convinced that this development will be the first piece. We talked to a couple other developers who are here in the room tonight. But this will be the first piece of bringing in other development projects for our downtown. I'm just convinced that just like you see what happens, and I say this over and over again, whether it's in the downtown committee, but when they build even the Liberty Center, the first thing they do is they put in residents right in the downtown to help support those businesses, right? They put in residents that have enough money, they make enough money to go spend it at the businesses right there. And I think this will greatly influence our downtown in a positive way. Whether or not, all I'm going to do is submit to my law director, and he believes that both entities are the same. Not trying to put words in his mouth. But I mean, we've been talking about the same guy and the same deal all along. So I just think that this would then also be something that I would support.
Mayor,
Okay.
Mr. Hunnell, I would encourage you to go check out the financials of Liberty Center before you start using that as a beacon of hope. They're not doing very good. So just prior to doing that. And, you know, Mr. Cohen, you and I had a conversation on April 1st, 2020. Do you recall that conversation? Well, the conversation went something like, Jim, and we were friendly, right? I mean, I enjoyed taking trips and going over to Hamilton and Loveland and looking at your projects. I said, hey, I think we need to pause this. And I said this back then. March 15th of 2020, everybody probably recalls what happened. Do you know what happened? The government shut down our businesses. So I called you and I said, Jim, we've got to not have this meeting right now. I think it is extremely arrogant and it's out of place to do it. And you basically, your rebuttal to me was, I don't care, I was guaranteed this meeting. And that sits in my head. And we had that discussion because if we're talking about downtown and we're talking about collective units, yes, this might be good for you, but what about everyone else? And when you said that, that really, and I'm sitting there thinking, well, is this development going to be good for everyone else? Is it going to spur other developers? Is it going to spur other people wanting to come in and do stuff here? I don't know. But my problem is, and I think if I heard it once, I heard it 22 times tonight, it's the process. And we don't know that answer. And we don't know if this is going to help.
Is it possible for me to address council since council is addressing me?
I'm sorry, Mr. Cohn. We're in the middle of a
All right,
motion.
so that's
and
what I'm saying. It's like, I get it, Councilmember Hunter. Hey, you guys, and truth be told, I own 2 properties downtown. I own the Adesso building, 123 East Main Street, and I own my company, Eco Development, and I own a parcel downtown that I'm about ready to tear down a house and build a new one, which I'm extremely excited about. My wife is more excited. And I also own my current house, which is right on Mason Road. What does that mean? I'm vested in downtown. I want it to thrive. And everybody looks at me and is like, oh, you're crazy. Why don't you want this thing to come in? There's going to be 160 new people to walk through your front door or do whatever. Because I want to make sure it's right. And not only that, but I listen to everyone out here. And they're not certain if it's right. So, 2 weeks? Again, I don't want to be a broken record. I think the public did an incredible job speaking truth into what's happening. And again, it's just, I don't understand the urgency. I would love to understand why we had to call a special meeting to do this, and take it even a further step, why we had to call a special meeting to have public input.
I called the meeting for 7 o'clock for a first reading so that we could schedule a second reading and give the public time to engage with us in the second reading, because that's what I was used to us doing. Actually, what I'm used to us doing is voting on contracts we don't read,
Special meeting?
voting in the dark of night, voting on real estate transactions that are not on the agenda. That was under our previous administration before I came there. I developed the transparency legislation. I wanted a way to force the disclosure of council members and relevant staff during executive session so that it would happen. Mr. Chance, how many contracts have you voted on that had loose ends or that you didn't read? Have you voted on any that you didn't read? How many times have we gone out on this dais, it's recorded on ICRC, by the way, where we were handed the legislation and we didn't have a chance to read it.
Is that a signing motive? It certainly
No, I'm
sounds
asking you the question. And Mr. Chance, while you
like you're
mentioned
signing motive like I've done.
you mentioned Adesso Coffee, the building, eco-development. Have you properly reported the entities
this is my
and the
opportunity,
ownership of
folks.
those
Here's-
buildings in your financial disclosure forms with the
God,
IRS?
Kathy.
Here's my
Stop.
opportunity.
You've
Hey,
been assigning
Are
votes
you
all night
assigning
long.
motive?
I-
Can you
Because
answer
this
the
is
question?
extremely
No, you guys, I did not.
unprofessional,
Mr.
Mayor.
Chant, can you answer the
Kathy
question?
Grossman, this is very unprofessional, and
Hey.
I'm not going to allow the mayor of our
Mr.
city.
Chance,
Well,
can
my-
you answer
my
the question?
my
I am not
Hold
allowing the
on a
mayor of
second.
this city to
Mike,
talk
no,
to
I'm
people like
totally
this.
fine with
This
it.
is
It doesn't bother me
unprofessional.
a
He
bit.
can answer the question.
It
Let him
doesn't
answer
bother
the
me a bit.
question.
I can answer the question. I'm a big boy. I can speak up for myself. I made an error. And if anyone in here is without sin, pick up and throw the first stone. All right? I made an error, and I have worked with the commission. I would just like to know who made the inquiry.
Grossman? Could it?
Oh,
Does it matter if your reports were not accurate?
the inquiry. and
This is way not germane, by the way.
This is not germane,
You
but
just
let's
brought it
move
up.
forward.
Does it matter? We've got to get back to the motion.
Grossman?
The point to make was,
I'd like to call.
We have
the meeting-
often-
I'd like to adjourn the meeting.
no, you may not, and you don't have the floor. The point is, we have often voted on things with loose ends. We have often voted on things that were not on the agenda that involved economic development packages. We have often had apparently clerical mistakes on which entity is which. And we've often had false allegations and unnecessary delays, histrionics, unprofessional behavior. And to take this motion off the floor, I disagree with, but if there's anybody else that has a reason to take it off or leave it on, go ahead, and then we're going to call the question.
Mayor, you did ask me a question, so
Oh, that's right. Let's get back to that super quick.
Is it germane?
Wait, you answered that you made mistakes.
Yeah, I made mistakes.
Okay, and you asked the question, who reported it?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I don't have an answer to that question. But if your disclosure reports were incorrect,
How would you know about that if this is between,
they're public records.
and the Ethics Commission has been incredible to work with. We'll get the full.
Our law director's
You
telling
guys
us to
can
get
read
back
it
to
all
the
you want.
question.
I can't wait for you to read it because they've been awesome to work with. But I really wonder who did the inquiry.
All right, we've got to get back to the question. Anything germane?
I can
to
tell you.
motion. Let's call the roll, please.
What, you don't want to discuss that anymore?
Councilmember Stricula,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gilb,
No.
Councilmember Hunterlaw,
No.
Mayor Grossman,
No.
Councilmember Nelson,
Yes.
Councilmember Chance,
Yes.
Councilmember Bradburn.
No.
Okay, the motion to pull it off the agenda fails. All right, so,
Mayor, I'm sorry, I'd like to make a motion to make sure that there's a public hearing at the second reading on September 13th, or if there's a special meeting prior to that, that there's a public hearing with proper notification.
you're requesting a public hearing on September 13th
At the second reading.
at the second
If it
reading.
happens to be on September 13th, that'd be a great time to have it. If it happens to be at a special meeting prior to that, then that's when the public hearing should be.
So you're saying you want to pass the motion right now to schedule a public hearing on a second reading on a development agreement?
I am ensuring that the public gets another opportunity to speak their mind.
Are you insinuating that they won't get a chance because somehow I won't
Just
let
making-
them?
No, I'm just making sure.
Okay,
They weren't
and
going
that's
to
why
get a-
you called
they-
this special
They weren't going
meeting?
to get a chance tonight.
Well, it wasn't part of our normal process. So again, the characterizations and mischaracterizations
Not
are
character-
so
Not
unappreciated.
characterizing anything, excuse me. I'm
I
not
really want to hear
anything.
from
What
the public.
What I am saying is that you were eager to hear from the public, but you were so eager, in fact, that you forgot to actually put it on the agenda.
Because that's not normally what occurs on a first
Neither is
reading.
And
special
again,
meeting.
and again, we have set the bar
And
so
you
low,
called a special meeting,
set the bar
and that was
so
your
low
right.
that's where we're going to stay.
Those are your characterizations. Is there a motion to that unclear, is there a second to that very unclear motion about scheduling?
Well, hang on.
Yeah, we need some
Make it-
help here.
I think the motion is to schedule a public hearing prior to whatever evening the second
At the
reading
second-
occurs. At the second reading, there's a motion to conduct a public hearing.
Okay, is there a second?
Second?
All right, any council discussion? Let's call the roll.
Vice Mayor Gilb,
Yes.
Councilmember Hunterlaw,
Yes.
Mayor Grossman,
Yes.
Councilmember Nelson,
Yes.
Councilmember Chance?
Yes.
Councilmember Bradburn?
Yes?
Councilmember Stricula?
Yes.
Okay, let me ask a question for clarification at the second reading. Is it okay if we call at a different time than 7 o'clock? Because I believe we have a heavy agenda, at least at the next meeting. But are you going to criticize me if we have a public hearing before or after the 7 o'clock meeting? What time do you want, in other words, Mr. Stricula?
Whatever time is most appropriate, given the agenda for that evening.
Okay,
Fantastic.
thank you.
Mayor, let's
Awesome.
do 5 o'clock again, for 5 to 7.
We'll take a look and see what we've got to work with, okay? All right, so where are we at, Jeff? It's not normal, though.
So, yeah, so if we're going to give proper notice of a public hearing, we need to know the date and time. So if it's going to be 5 o'clock, we need to know, in order to give the proper notification of the public hearing.
Okay, then,
So right now, we've got a motion that passed that said there will be a public hearing at the second reading. But staff, we need some guidance about how to provide the proper public notice for that.
Let's do Monday, the 13th, before our next council meeting from 5 to 7.
I thought with normal.
wait, remember to be recognized by the chair, please. Does that work with staff and what your needs are?
We had anticipated holding a ceremony, a brief ceremony in recognition of September 11th.
That's right, okay. Okay.
No, I'm just saying that that's the only complication I can think of that you may want to be aware of.
Mayor, what's the notice requirement? What's required of staff in terms of giving that notice? Is it 7-day notice, 10-day notice, 14-day notice?
Actually, there's, only zoning amendments require public hearings. And the zoning code sets forth what the public notice requirement is for that. So there is no, I can't tell you that it's 7 days, 10 days, 30 days. What I can tell you is if you want us to give proper public notice of a public hearing, we at least need to be able to put the day and time.
No, you should set the public hearing now. That's typically, this is the notice. We're going to have a public hearing at the next meeting or 2 meetings from now at an estimated time.
So is there a motion to set it for the 13th at 5 p.m.?
Well, no, because we have the 9/11, and I think that's more important. So I think maybe in light of that, or 911,
I think we could do it with our plans if you set it 5 to 7. The difficulty would be you'd have to have a, to be polite, you'd need to have a certain time to end. And then begin at 7, we could transition to our normal meeting and work in there. It's obviously up to council. I didn't want to say you couldn't do it. It's just a consideration how you time it.
sure.
Okay, I'm fine with that.
So I would second that. If that's the motion, it's September 13th, 5 o'clock,
Okay,
I'll second it.
all right. All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Okay, all right, so now we are still on item 4. I need a motion to read by title only ordinance 2021-92. All right, all in favor?
Yes.
Any opposed?
No.
All right, we'll take a roll call on that. To do a first reading? It takes 5?
To read by title only.
Oh, to read by title only, you're right, sorry. Okay. We do need to take a roll call on that.
Councilmember Hunter Law?
So this is
just to read by title
yeah.
only.
Yeah, so if it fails, it needs 5 votes to read by title only. If it fails, Jeff will have to read the entire ordinance.
So I'm a yes.
Oh, am I next? Yes, it's a motion to read by title only. So you're voting yes? Okay,
Mayor Grossman?
yes.
Councilmember Nelson?
No.
Councilmember Chance?
Yes.
Councilmember Bradburn?
Yes.
Councilmember Stricula?
No.
Vice Mayor Gilb?
Yes.
Okay, so the motion passed. And so we need to read it by title only.
Ordinance number 2021-92, authorizing the city manager to enter into a development agreement with Keystone Lot LLC related to a downtown Mason development project.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Any opposed? All right. Good night, everyone. Thank you for coming.